I need $5,000 to have it back. I said, you mean you want me to pay you for the return of my stolen property? He said, yep, that's the only way I can give it back to you. I had a customer who had rented my cars several times. In fact, he was an ex-Atlanta police officer. And he had rented the Gallardo a few times, so he wanted to rent that again. But in addition, he wanted to rent my Ferrari 612 Sky so that his friend could have something to drive around while he was in town. And so about, I'd say it was on a Wednesday or Thursday, they picked up both cars and began paying for the rentals and gave us a credit card. We verified the insurance and went through all the normal steps. Over the next few days, they kept renewing the rentals, saying, we're having so much fun, we want to keep it. And I'm continuing to make a good deal of money renting the cars out, and I've got a, good customer in them, so I'm pleased with all that. But around Monday, I stopped hearing back from them. And I began telling them, well, it's time to either turn the cars back in or pay us for another day. And they wouldn't answer. And so I believe it was Tuesday night. I was out at my bachelor party because that Saturday I was getting married. And so we were out racing go-karts and having a good dinner, and I got a phone call, and it was peculiar. There was a woman on the other end of the phone, and she said, my husband is the guy who bought your Ferrari today, but we've decided we don't want it. In fact, we'd like the BMW we gave you and the $15,000 in cash as a down payment back, and we'd like to undo this whole deal. And I said, well, ma'am, literally every part of that sentence is a problem and fundamentally incorrect, because I didn't sell your husband my car, and whoever did was not authorized to do so. And she said, well, he's told us that he was one of your employees and that he worked for this rental car company. And I said, well, that's absolutely not the case. And she proceeded to tell me that, well, I'm a lawyer and possession is 9/10 of the law. I said, ma'am, it's a rental car, so possession is literally 0/10 of the law. And by saying that, I highly doubt you're actually a lawyer. But I'll need you to return to me this stolen property and understand that the police will very soon be going to find it. So she got upset, hung up the phone, and I had to return to try to enjoy what was left of my bachelor party before spending the next day and the next several days trying to work this all out. So I tried to contact the rental customer. Again, no answer. And I go on to track the cars. And I see that the Lamborghini is in a parking lot in Midtown. So I take the other key, go to Midtown, find that the car has had the front knocked off of it, and say, well, we found it at least. And so the next day I had a tow truck take it to my preferred body shop and begin the process of repairs, and we filed a claim with his insurance company. Still, he wouldn't answer the phone, and we could not find the Ferrari because the battery had gone dead, because like many of the Ferraris I've owned, the 612 was one of these cars that if you don't drive it every day or every 2 or 3 days, the battery will be dead next time you return to it. And so the tracking device was not functioning because the capacitance had worn out, and I had no idea where to find it. But I'd continued to have a little bit of luck getting in touch with this woman who was still not understanding that I didn't have her BMW or the money or access to the customer, but that she did absolutely have a car that was stolen. I came to find out that this is called theft by conversion, meaning that you had the privilege of use of this car, but that you converted it in a use that you were not permitted. So selling it was something that a rental customer was not allowed to do. So in converting it to an asset that they made for sale, that is the theft. Now the problem is, when you know who has your stolen property, the police don't do a very good job of trying to find out where it is. They seem to think that you'll go about finding it, or that it's not the same thing as throwing out an APB and having everybody find it, or at least everyone try. Because I had delivered the car in one county, and a few miles over in the next county is where the car was being used. And they were still occasionally driving it around, because I'd see the tracking device work and it would be at the valet lot of some restaurant or a mall or anything like that. But I could never get there in time to take my other key and repossess the car. So I had spoken to the police, and they said, well, yeah, we see it, but you've reported it stolen in your county and it's here, so we don't have a system that allows us to just understand every car that's stolen in the world. It seems like a market failure and something someone should explore, but they were very, very useless at the time. So I continue trying to express to this woman exactly the gravity of the situation for her, but she continues to be unwilling to return the car. So my groomsmen and I, we're all going around, we've got the rehearsal dinner coming up and everything's happening, and even as we led up to it, I still couldn't get in touch with the rental customer. But on Friday, literally the day before my wedding, I was finally able to talk to him, and I met him at a Waffle House, of all places. He, for some reason, had convinced himself that I might be pleased that he had sold this car, even though he had not specified a term of the loan, any interest terms, a selling price, or anything other than the fact that he had taken this guy's BMW, taken $15,000 in cash as a down payment, and agreed to some sort of payment schedule. Additional unfortunate news is that he didn't have a phone number, an address, an email address, or literally anything other than that the guy went by Lucky. So he was of very little use trying to get us the car back, even once he realized that he had made such a mistake. And so the police were starting to question him and trying to figure out things, but they weren't moving at all quickly. And I had my wedding the next day, and then I was leaving on my honeymoon the day after. And so the whole morning of our wedding, I'm constantly on the phone. We're trying to take photographs with the bridal party and everything like that. And I just can't. Literally, I cannot afford to have this go any way other than perfectly. And the reason for that is that the most difficult thing about setting up an exotic car rental company is managing the insurance. And trying to get an exotic car rental insurance policy is nearly impossible, and keeping it is also pretty much impossible, particularly if you ever file a claim. Because even though the insurance is legitimate and it's in place and it will pay out a claim, the accepted understanding on all parties is that if you file a claim, you will not be invited to renew the policy. And so while I could probably get the insurance company to pay for the theft, I would be invited not to renew, and so all the other car payments that I would need to make would not be possible because I would be out of business. So it was very much a rock and a hard place situation, and as you'd imagine, my new bride and her family and everybody else around the circumstance is pretty worried for me because they understand that this is a tremendous amount of money at risk, and all the cars are completely financed. It's not as though I own them and can just lose the money. It would be a long-term debt situation to try to recover in the event that things did not go so well. So we go through the wedding, and I'm wondering all the time, what do I do if my phone rings during the ceremony? Do I answer? Certainly I can't afford not to, but that seems like a bad decision. And fortunately that didn't happen, or I suppose unfortunately, because the next morning I still had made no progress. I called my lawyer and I said, look, I've got to leave this in your hands. There's nothing else that I can do. But please, please, please have my car by the time I get back from this week-long honeymoon in St. Lucia. And so he says he's on it, and I'm literally texting with Lucky's wife, trying to express to her the significance of the situation and the importance that she return said stolen property as we're taking off from the airport. So somehow I did manage to enjoy our honeymoon without too much stress and anxiety, but it was certainly there in the background. And when I got back in touch with Lucky, finally. I convinced his wife to have Lucky call me. And Lucky said, I've still got your car. I understand sort of what's happened, but I need $5,000 to have it back. I said, you mean you want me to pay you for the return of my stolen property? He said, yep, that's the only way I can give it back to you. I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I called the police officers that were in charge of the case, and I explained to them what had happened. They said, well, do you want to pay $5,000? I was like, well, $5,000 at this moment, particularly at the prospect of everything else that I'm going to have to spend, is a little bit daunting. They said, well, ask if he'll take a check. I said, are you insinuating that I should stop payment on said check and therefore bounce a check to someone for $5,000? Because I believe that's a felony. They said, yeah, but don't worry about it. It's okay. It'll all be fine. I said, well, okay. So called him back. Lucky was happy to take a check. Lucky's got a bank account. So go to meet Lucky where he's told me the car is. And so we go to this parking lot in downtown Atlanta, and the car is obviously completely dead. So I've got to call a tow truck to come and get it. And because you really don't want to be jumping off a Ferrari ever, and certainly not in that circumstance where you know the battery's been drained and even the alternator's questionable. So I get the truck headed that way, and at the time, Lucky and I are talking. He's hanging out. He has a friend actually drive up in this seafoam green, atrocious Maserati Quattroporte, and the paint which had obviously been a repaint, was falling off in chunks, and so he was asking me for advice on what body shop he might use. So I made a great recommendation to him. I don't know if he ever took me up on it. Then we parted ways. I followed the tow truck home. Lucky went away with the check. So as I'm headed home, predictably, I get a phone call from the bank. They say, hey, we've got this check and it looks a little bit suspicious and the guy looks a little bit suspicious, and so we just really want to know what's going on. I said, yes, that's an extortion payment for the return of stolen property. Please don't honor it. There should be a stop payment in your system. Oh, great. Thank you so much, Mr. Bolian. I hope you have a great day. Well, it hadn't started out that way, but it is what it is. So we make it back to my warehouse and go on about trying to get the car charged back up and evaluating the state of things. And fortunately, it was in pretty good condition, a little curb damage on a wheel and a scratch in the clear bra, but nothing to be too terribly concerned about. But a few minutes later, Lucky shows up. His wife, I guess, had found our address, and even though we generally delivered cars to customers and didn't have a whole lot of customers here, he came to the warehouse to express his displeasure with the fact that he had not received his $5,000. I explained to him that's a felony. What you've done is extort payment for the return of stolen property, and I'm not interested in participating in that. What'll be best is if we part ways and never speak of this again. I've never seen or heard from Lucky or that customer since then, but it was definitely a very, very dramatic week in my life where the Ferrari got stolen and the Lamborghini got crashed.
As a luxury and exotic brand dealer, you know the challenge of putting the right price tag on perfection. Ritz Garage places you directly in touch with our qualified network of new and used dealers with no auction fees. Ritz Garage. Premium cars, premium dealers without premium fees.